Good evening, everyone. Time for episode 11 of Kerr's Rage, part 1 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga by me, starting on page 134, about halfway down the page. That's where we left off. Okay. D'Artin fought against the racking pain of his wounds with every staggering step. He had to reach Carmen. If she was killed, he could never forgive himself for his weakness. His armor was colored red and black with blood and gore, much of which was his own. His eyes reflected the firelight, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword with the strength of his own pain. Carmen's body was outlined by the blazing campfire. It appeared that she was being consumed by horrible demons from within the fire itself. Smoke curled around him as he raised his sword high into the air. "Odin, give me strength," he raged, as he crashed headlong into the nearest wolf. And lo, he remembered his father's teachings, and he remembered Odin's rune for strength, and from his lips it issued forth. The rune empowered his body and shut off his pain. When his sword fell, it fell with all his truth strength, and then some more. The wolves were taken by surprise. They hadn't expected an attack to come from such badly wounded prey, and the first wolf could do little but roll with the force of the blow. But the man's sword had shattered its spine, and it died almost instantly. Despite the power of the rune, D'Artin was losing the feeling in his sword arm. With swift action, he abandoned his shield and grasped his sword two-handed. The two remaining beasts would be on him in an instant. Kerr wasn't far behind. His right hand held his axe, and his left his long dagger. His legs pumped in a steady rhythm to his song of Clangetius. The cry of battle was hot in his veins, and the anguish caused by seeing Carmen fall drove him forward. The wolves rushed D'Artin. Bloodlust drove them to the kill, and their prey seemed more helpless without his shield. And surely, if D'Artin had been alone, then the beast's assumptions would have proven true, for the wolf's attack was so sudden that he wouldn't have been able to thrust his sword truly, and then his throat would surely have been torn out. But D'Artin was not alone, and the lead wolf was caught by Kalor's next arrow. Striking the leaping animal in the chest, it diverted the monster's slashing jaws. D'Artin and the wolf fell crashing to the ground. The beast struggled to tear the killing bar from its breast, and D'Artin was further injured by its savage contortions. The wolf's massive weight crushed down upon him. Its razor-edged teeth slashed within inches of his face. Soon his arms would prove too weak to fend off its desire to kill. The monster realized that its own death was near. It strove to claim a final soul before its journey into the abyss. All that D'Artin could see were its terrible eyes and dripping fangs. All that he could smell was the stench of carrion upon its breath. All that he could feel was a terrible hunger in its empty heart. He knew that his own end was near. Suddenly, the wolf's body was lifted from him. Kerr's axe struck in an invincible upward arc, sending the wolf flying, its body nearly torn in two. The remaining beast saw through its own savage fury and chose its own survival over the insistent urging in its mind to continue the attack. Leaping away from Kerr's next attack, it raced off into darkness. Kalor's arrow chased it into the night. The battle seemed to be over, at least for now. The scene of carnage was great. In all, 9 of the immense wolves lay dead or dying about the clearing, and several more could be heard retreating northward. Their eerie howls echoed throughout the wood for some time. It was a haunting symphony of evil. Kalor and D'Artin knelt beside Carmen, her wounds seemed severe, but her torn armor and clothing made inspection difficult. "Help her," Kerr said. "I'll make sure that the rest have gone, and see to Leander." Scouring the woods, he killed those wolves that weren't already dead, and ensured that no more were lying in wait nearby. Kalor helped D'Artin remove Carmen's ruined, blood-stained armor. The wolves had torn through her thick shoulder plate and penetrated the flesh underneath. blood ebbed from a dreadful tear in her shoulder and breast, and her breath came only in ragged, shallow gasps. Her leg wounds seemed less severe, at least externally. Her shin guards were made of very tough leather, and they had kept the beast's teeth from breaking the skin. But her right leg had been broken just above the ankle. She was going into shock. Simple stitches and herbal techniques would not save her. Kalor looked gravely at Dartin. We need magic, and my simple illusions won't heal her. The wizard said that you had powers, Dartin. He said that you were the last priest of Odin. Can Odin heal? There are runes, but they come with a price. My father taught them to me when I was a boy, but he said that they weren't to be used except in times of great need. If you don't try something right now, Carmen is going to die. The runes are the magic of the gods, and they were never meant for mortals to use. I don't even know what will happen if I try to use them. Surely even Odin would want to save her. All right, but we must clean her wounds first. They worked diligently, cleaning her wounds, pulling pieces of torn clothing from her flesh, and washing away the wolf's foul salvations. If Dartin's rune worked, Odin's power would heal her, and any foreign matter still inside of her would be trapped. I'm glad that she's not awake for this, he whispered. When Kerr was certain that no further enemies lurked nearby, he sought out Leander. When he found him, he was nearly unconscious. In his delirium, he was mumbling some strange, incoherent words. Come with me, my friend, Kerr said with more gentleness than he would ever show openly. And with the tremendous strength of his people, he hefted the oversized half-elf over his shoulder like a sack of milled corn. For indeed, Leander's weight was little more than that to him. Hurrying to their camp, he placed him in Kalor's care and went back in search of Leander's missing weapons. He spent some time looking for their scattered horses, but those that may have escaped had traveled far and would not be found until daylight. All right, the next chapter, Faith. The rune of healing was one of the first that Dartin's father had taught to him in faraway Sundsvall. Odin's runes were similar to magical patterns of sorcery, in that they manifested real effects in the material world. But the power didn't come from a universal force. Rather, the power was a divine gift driven by faith. It was a blessing given to only a chosen few, yet those gifted believe that the power exists within us all. Dartin's father had believed in Odin, and he knew the power of his own faith. It was an ability that he had passed on to his only son. Odin's runes were the keys that unlocked that hidden potential. They were the ancient science of an old religion, and like most ancient religions, most of what was known was lost. But all the forgotten lore of the runes that still existed lived on in Dartin, and his faith was strong. Yet although his faith in Odin was the devotion of his life, he had rarely attempted to use the power of the runes, for the use of the power was perilous. It was a vital force that could intoxicate the user, and its use came with an ever-present temptation to wield it for the wrong reasons. To those that experienced it, the call of darkness was a constant threat. Darkness promised the easiest road to power, while the path of light was the most arduous, with only the hope of enlightenment at its end. But Dartin had long ago chosen the path of righteousness and wisdom. He believed that he walked in the hands of his God. Knowing that if his faith ever wavered, his powers would leave him. Odin, my father, here in my hour of need. Carmen is a warrior and a woman of honor worthy of your healing. She can do much good in the world, for her heart is pure and virtuous, and her faith is great. Please grant me the power to heal her mortal wounds, so that she may continue to do battle in the light of your wisdom. Prayer helped him concentrate upon the power of the rune, and with his hands he drew it over Carmen's breast, and with his voice he invoked it. The power of the rune was great, and her body began to heal as if time was passing with incredible speed. What happened next not even Dartin could have foreseen, for all the hurts which Carmen had suffered were being channeled through him as a conduit of the Almighty. Where her shoulder had been torn, then so too was his. Where her leg had been broken, his leg was broken. He wanted to fall, to collapse beneath the weight of her pain combined with his, but something held him, and despite it all he stood fast, and he did not stop until his task was done and Carmen was healed, and so too was he. When his work was done, all that remained of the wolves' attacks were a few thin pink scars. Mighty Odin, I thank you for saving this woman, my friend. Turning his attention to Leander, he again invoked Odin's rune, and Leander too was healed. But too much pain and too much battle had exhausted him. Lying down, he thought he would just rest for a moment, but he was soon asleep. For a moment, Kayla thought that Dartin had but a single eye, but when he looked closer, he saw that it was just a dancing shadow from the fire. One by one, they each fell into an exhausted sleep. All of them, that is, except for a hidden dwarf with a deeply furrowed brow. Wake up, Kayla said, kicking Dartin's heels. Breakfast. Something smells good, Leander said. Bacon. Well done, Kayla. Thank God somebody can cook. Rummaging through his pack, he pulled out his bowl and his fork and quickly helped himself to some biscuits. Despite the terror of the past night, his stomach was screaming for food. Somebody should try and wake Carmen. I'll do it, Kayla said. Do it carefully, Leander urged. She will awaken believing that the wolves are still attacking her. Now Kayla hesitated, uncertain. Carmen was a dangerous fighter. Leander smiled. "Aw, she won't hurt you." And when she did awaken, her body ached so badly that there was no fight left in her, but she gladly accepted breakfast. While she ate, her mind went over the events of the previous night. What could have motivated the wolves' attack, and who could have an interest in stopping their mission? Dartin sat cross-legged upon a nearby log, meditating upon Odin's divine teachings. His mind also went with Kerr, who had left camp in search of their lost horses. He returned some time later with Alger, his mountain pony, and Leander's horse. The other two horses had been killed. Luckily, their saddles and gear hadn't been damaged. "I'm going down to the stream to bathe," Carmen said. "Would you mind keeping a watch over me?" "Of course not, but please let me know when to turn my back." When they had finished eating, they walked down to the nearby stream. Kerr found a comfortable tree to sit against. Taking out his whetstone, he went to work repairing the damage to his axe blade. Leaving her backpack on a nearby rock, she walked down to the stream. Glen Falls was aptly named, spring-fed and cold. It started small, but here it was a powerful brook, and in this place it tumbled over a massive piece of granite, some 20 feet in height, plunging down into a deep trout-filled pool. The water was cold and purifying. What remained of her clothing was covered in dried blood, as was her body. To help distance herself from the past night's horror, she diligently worked to clean her clothing and herself. When she'd finished with her clothes, she waded out into the center of the pool and held her auburn hair beneath the falls. Her right leg ached where the bones had been broken, and a long, narrow scar descended from her left shoulder to the base of her breast. The scar was all that remained of her wounds, a trauma that had almost claimed her life. She only wished that Dartin could have healed her mind of the experience, for although she was a brave and skilled woman at arms, there was no training that could have prepared her for the wolves' terrible attack. Their evil red eyes would remain forever in her memory, experiences that were little dulled by the cold, clear water of the brook about her body. Stepping from the stream, she stretched and exercised until her body was dry, and then dressed herself with spare clothes from her pack. Her wet garments were torn and in need of sewing. All that she had left were her woolen clothes. They were enough to shelter her from the elements, but would do little to protect her body in combat. Hefting her backpack and remaining gear, they walked back to camp. She was still hungry. "Dire wolves, that's what they were," Leander began while they were all resting about the morning fire. "My mother used to tell us stories about them when we were young. 'Don't go out into the woods at night,' she used to say, 'for that's when the black-hearted wolves hunt. searching for souls to fill their empty hearts. Where their souls should be is a void so deep that it can never be filled though they devour 1,000 souls. We never believed her, of course, but neither did we venture out into the woods at night. Chuckling to himself at his memory, he continued, I believe her now. There's more to it, Kilo said. I'm sure of it. Just wolves, Kerr said. Nothing more. No, Carmen said. They were driven by something. I felt it. Whatever it was, Leander said, we'll have to be more careful from now on. Hopefully Grog Anvilhead will have more information for us. If he's anything like the Anvilheads that I know, Kerr said, then he'll be just a blade edge smarter than stone. Let's just hope that's not the case when we meet him. You told us all about the feud between the Keg Porters and the Anvilheads. If we leave early, we should be able to reach Thieves' Town by noon. Each of us will have to ride double. Kerr can ride his pony. I'd like to buy some new armor when we get there. The way things are going, I should probably buy 2 new suits. They all laughed at her first attempt at humor since the wolves' attack. They were glad that Carmen was back. Loading their extra gear onto Kerr's pony, they were forced to leave 2 saddles behind. Dartin and Carmen rode together, as did Leander and Kalor. Without turning back, they left Wolf Glen behind them, chasing the blood moon in its descent toward the northern horizon. And next episode, we will begin with a chapter entitled Lycurgus on page 143. Thank you, have a good night, and remember, as always, read Kerr's Rage, part 1 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga, by me, and all of the other books in the series. Thank you, have a great night.